Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Medical Terminology. So we are on week 10 already. So this is the lymphatic system and immunology. So just to start, so announcements for this week. So you have your assignment, looking at some vaccination stuff. You'll be watching a video, answering some questions with that. And then you also have a quiz this week. Make sure you get that done. It's going to cover last week's topic, a little bit of this week's topic. And then finally, you have the withdrawal date coming up. This is October 25th. So 25th is the last day to withdraw from your fall courses. So if you need to do that, make sure you get that done before then. Yeah. Okay, so for this week, we're studying the lymphatic system. So kind of looking at the anatomy. So the lymphatic system is actually very similar to the blood vessels and the cardiovascular system. It's pretty cool. And so lymphatic system, you have these vessels, you have these lymph ducts, those lymph nodes, you have these capillaries. And so what it is this interstitial fluid, which is liquid that contains your immune cells and certain lipids and proteins, is transported around the body through these vessels, through these lymph vessels. And so at various points of your body, you'll have what are called lymph nodes. And what those are is they kind of act as filters. And so they just make sure that any bacteria, anything bad is getting filtered out or that it's being dealt with by immune response. So um, this is all over your body. And so it's pretty cool stuff. So, like I said, the main point of this system is immune defense and also transport fluids as well as what's contained within the fluids. um, with the lymph system or lymphatic system, excuse me. The difference between in the cardiovascular system is that the cardiovascular system actually has the heart pumping fluid throughout the body, but with the lymphatic system, the movement of skeletal muscle actually is what transports the fluids. So when you're walking around, if you're exercising, whatever, that movement actually helps with the movement of the fluids. So coming from a kines background, one thing I've learned with all this is that, moving around and having, practicing good movement health habits is critical to maintain the health of your other system, of the various systems within your body. So if you want good lymphatic flow, if you want good circulation with that, go for a walk, move around. This will help with some swelling stuff. And this will just kind of help with your immune response as well. So pretty cool. So with your immune system, you kind of have three main parts that we'll go over. So you have your barrier defense, your innate response, and you have your adaptive response. Okay. So the first one is your barrier defense. So with the barrier defense, you have kind of three main parts. You have the skin, you have acid, and you have enzymes. So when I say the skin, so your skin acts as a barrier and it's kind of your first line of defense. The whole point of the skin is it keeps everything on the outside out there and it keeps everything on the inside in there. So, we talked about the integumentary system a few weeks back. And so during that time, we talked about how um, your skin cells, how you're constantly shedding them, how it kind of helps keep bacteria out. And so that's kind of a first line of defense. And then with your digestive tract, obviously you're putting stuff, you're eating food, you're drinking water or some type of beverage. And so that goes into your body. Well, how does your body defend it? So it has kind of two defenses there. First one is you have enzymes. So in your mouth, you actually secrete certain enzymes that help break down bacteria and help kind of protect you. And the second one is acid. So your stomach acid actually acts as a defense as well. Um, and so what's interesting is with like very small infants, they don't really produce enough stomach acid, and so they're very susceptible to stuff, which is why you have to be careful with them, just because they don't have the stomach acid to kill off the bacteria. So that's kind of your first line of defense. The whole idea with this is to keep stuff out. And so the next one is, something happens and something gets in, whether through a cut or whether, you get a cold from someone. And so the innate response is kind of your first line of defense. This can get quickly overwhelmed and Um, it's kind of there to deal with small problems, but like I said, can get overwhelmed when viruses or bacteria start replicating quickly. And so how they work is that they go in and they consume whatever the pathogen is. And then with macrophages, they will actually self-destruct. And you have what are called natural killer cells. And what they do is they actually trigger apoptosis, which is when the cell, they go in, they trigger a certain gene in another cell that causes it to self-destruct. This is for when a cell has been infected and it's replicating the virus. The thing with this though is that these cells die pretty quick. They're a one-time use. The next one is your adaptive response. So this is the one that we often think of when we think of the immune response. So this is your B cells and your T cells. And what these do is that these produce the antigens and the antibodies. Their job is to produce these things that will attach to these foreign pathogens and help destroy them. With the adaptive response, it has what's called a memory. And so it has the ability to, once it sees like a pathogen, like a specific bacteria, it'll actually memorize the surface proteins on that bacteria or the virus. And so if it ever sees it again in the future, it'll very quickly produce antibodies and will be able to go in and destroy them very quickly. So with the common cold, every year you get a different strain of that cold. The surface proteins change just enough that your body doesn't recognize it, and so it takes a few days for the adaptive response to kick in. It takes a little bit of time, which is why it takes so long to get over a cold. But once it memorizes something, once it knows what it's looking for, it's very fast and very efficient. And so the innate response, it can go in real quick, but it can get overwhelmed. It's kind of that first line of defense. And then adaptive response goes in, reinforces that, and deals with whatever's left. So each stage is super important and they all kind of work together. And then last thing that we're going to talk about, you have two types of immunity. So you have active and passive. So active is when your body produces antigens or antibodies. And so this is, your B cells and your T cells, like we were talking. This is your immune cells. But then you also have what's called passive. And so passive is when you actually are given antibodies from something else. So babies, for example, when they eat, they actually get antibodies from the mother. And so it acts as an immune system for the baby, helps protect them until they mature. And so with that, their body doesn't remember those antibodies, doesn't know how to produce them because it doesn't produce it itself. And so as soon as they're weaned, they're done. They have to learn how to basically produce their own antibodies. And so they'll get sick with every common cold under the sun until they have that immunity built up. Um, Yeah, so with medicine, we use both these principles. So with active immunity, we actually use this principle for vaccines. So we will expose people to either a damaged version of the disease or the pathogen, or we'll expose them to a dead version, or in the case of smallpox, we'll actually expose them to a less deadly version. If you have learned much about cowpox and smallpox, cowpox is similar enough that it can actually activate the immune system to prevent you from getting sick from smallpox, which is a much deadlier version of the virus. And then with passive, we also use that as well. We use this a bit during COVID, actually. People would get transfusions of, uh, oh, I'm thinking fluids. Um, And so the kind of the purpose was of that was someone would go and donate blood plasma, and then they would receive someone that was infected and sick would receive that blood plasma, and it had antibodies in it, and it would help kind of delay until the body could catch up and create its own antibodies. And so a lot of times with in medicine, when we use passive immunity, it's kind of just a delay tactic to try to get the body, give by the body time to catch up and do what it needs to do. So not a super viable treatment option long term, but it's a good short-term fix to help the body along. So that's all I had for this week. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to set up Zoom office hours with me. With it being cold season, make sure you're taking care of your immune system. Make sure you guys are sleeping enough. Um, Good luck. Have a good one.